Hey everybody, Objectively Dan here. Now, did you know that 2/3 of divorces in heterosexual marriages in the US are initiated by women? Did you also know that there's a growing number of people who would like to put a stop to that by ending no-fault divorce laws? Now, ending a marriage can be, and probably should be, a mutual decision, but it should also be available as a unilateral decision. No longer does someone have to prove abuse or infidelity to leave a marriage, and no longer does someone have to stay in a toxic marriage, at least until the law changes otherwise. So if you think a divorce is a sin, or you think people should remain trapped in a marriage, please try to give us a call if you can, because the show is starting right now. Greetings, season's greetings. I don't know what season, spring season's greetings. Why not? Hello, I'm Objectively Dan. This is Sofia Spina. We are Talk Heathen. This is the live show that happens on Sundays for you every single week. Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And not only is this a live call-in show, but it's a call-in show, part of the live call-in show. That's the most important part of the call-in. The live show is the call-in part of the live show. It's live and it's a call-in show, which means you should call in right now. The number for that is 512-991-9242, or you can call from your computer at tiny.cc/callth, and you can do it. You don't have to wait until we stop talking and then we get to the calls. You can call in at any time and we'll get to you anyway. Just want to emphasize that today, because we need some folks to call into the show. We got some open lines right now, but we are ready to talk to you when you can. Sophia, how are you doing this fine Sunday?
I'm doing well. I liked your slam poem just there about being a call-in show.
A little bit of improv, a little bit of a lot of themes in that, including calling and being live, I'd say.
Yeah.
But we don't have time to dissect that now. We got a show to run, so. Yeah. So Sophia, we have a segment that we do every week. It's the question of the week. You know this. It's the Talk Heathen to Me segment. And every week we try to ask that. The last week we asked, what was the sin that made God flood the earth? And here are the top 3 answers for that. Number 3 comes from Chuck Gatos 5387. God flooded the world because people were starting to worship Smokey the Bear and had to be shown how the big guy handles forest fires. Chuck Gatos, you're featured a lot in our top comments. This is the most unhinged comment I think I've seen.
I like to think he's referencing the fact that I was Smokey the Bear last Halloween on the show. And so I like to think I participated somehow in this or contributed.
I didn't make that connection. That's a deep cut, Chuck Gatos, if that was the case.
Let me know.
Yeah, thanks for your contribution either way. Number 2 comes from Rick Reasons, who says, what sin caused the flood? Sloth. You see, God forgot to put out the burning bush he used to freak Moses out, so he hurried to keep the rest of his creation catching fire. Sure, it was a slight overcorrection, but the bush is out now, which is just, I don't know, it's just very funny. Also, definitely getting events out of order. Moses definitely came after the flood. But
you know, nothing succeeds like excess, right? Yeah. And who knows that better than God, I guess.
I guess so. I guess you're right about that. Number 1 comes from Goody White Hat, who says God flooded the world because someone said his rain was weak, which, you know, is a thing. That's a thing, right?
Flood us now, because that's sort of
I guess so. I guess if you're personally insulted, you can just kind of do whatever you want if you're God. I don't know. They don't really make rules for folks like God. He's the one that kind of does that. But anyway, the prompt for this next week is, what's a good response to Jesus loves you? You should enter your answer below in the comments and we will read the top 3 answers. But Sophia, what's your response to Jesus loves you?
I think I'd have to say like in a gay way.
You said that to me before the show, and it's still funny. I don't know why it's so funny when you say it, but it is.
And just to be very clear, it would be great, sure, why not?
Yeah,
I just feel like if someone is telling me, I just feel like that would throw them off and make me laugh. So that's where I'm going with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the very like sardonic, mean person in me would want to say, well, I don't love him back. Right. Or something along those lines. Like, it's
just like, why?
This is a one-way relationship, right? Like I'm not, I'm receiving, but I'm not giving in this circumstance.
Have you heard the PRC Peaches song, God is a Freak?
I don't think, no, that's a thing.
It's very fun, but the whole idea is like that God's kind of watching you when you're doing all these sexual things, and so God's a bit of a freak, and that's the gist of the song, and it makes me think of that. Like, this is a little weird.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we're already off to a great start here on Talk Heathen. We're doing a really great job. The Sofia show. We should point this out too, because so in case you guys don't know, we always have a host and co-host. That's usually how we do the shows, and all that really means is host is kind of giving pace on the show and then doing announcements. But for some reason, you were top billing today on our thumbnail. That was on the live show. Your face is on there first, so maybe you should just take things over. So,
I mean, first of all, I'm not going to volunteer for more work that you're already in the process of doing, so you can just keep that. I'm perfectly content. But also, it might just be that like I'm a little more glam, Dan.
I think that's what it is.
Lipstick,
I think you're probably right. I think that's probably why they did that. So
next time, lipstick and lashes, got to get on it, man.
Lipstick and lashes. That's a good Patreon goal right there. I don't know why we don't do that kind of thing more. Real quickly, we need to give a special shout out to the wonderful, awesome crew that helped make this show happen. In case you don't know, it's not just me and Sofia doing all the work. It's these lovely folks behind the scenes making things happen. So thank you, crew, and thank you to everybody that makes this show go round. Because, man, if it was just us, Sofia, it wouldn't happen.
No. I don't know how to do any of this stuff.
We were just, I don't know. We call it a day. Say,
I just make some dumb jokes and go home. I mean,
yeah, it's true. Okay, well, we do have one caller in the queue here. Do you want to get this started, Sofia?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk to this person. This is an interesting topic. I think we'll see how this conversation goes. We have Miguel, who's calling in from England. Miguel, you're live on Talk Heathen. What's going on?
Yes, hello. I call about a very interesting topic that has gone under the radar, and is the claim that the Quran has been memorized. And I don't believe that claim.
The claim that the Quran has been memorized. You mean like in its entirety?
I mean, I claim no one ever memorized the Quran.
So, you mean like the entire Quran? Like you're saying no one has ever memorized the entire Quran?
Yes. That's. But
okay.
That's what the Muslims claim, and basically I want to offer my flat in Spain, my 3-bedroom flat, to whoever, the first person who proves that the Quran has been memorized. It's like a prize for a competition.
Okay. Wait. How would first of all, okay, I get it. So so it's often touted in Muslim tradition, right, that parts of the Quran have been memorized, which lends credence to its authenticity, right? So that the idea is like that parts of this is the same as it was before. So we know that the Quran's not changed, right? That's what the apologists would say. But like, okay, regardless of that fact, how would you even prove that it wasn't memorized? Like, what are the rules of this competition?
Yeah, no, the thing is, I think the Quran has never been memorized because the claim has never been tested. Because for me personally, to memorize the Quran would be kind of a miracle, a literal miracle can be, like. It could be like a kind of running 100 meters in 1 second. something like that.
Okay, but Miguel, how if someone were to say, I think the Quran has been memorized, right? How would they demonstrate that to you?
Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, the person, whoever the candidates for the flat, who wants to win the flat, just write the Quran from memory, and that's it. If someone can write
so do they have to do that?
The Quran from memory.
Okay, do they have to do it in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be in front of me, but the thing is, that would be like a massive event, you understand? That would be like, I don't know, like the discovery of that the Earth is round, you understand? It could be a massive test, because if the candidates don't get an exact copy of the Quran, that would mean that they have been lying.
Yeah, I guess so.
Agree on a particular translation, also, so you can check it.
Yes,
yeah.
It'd have to be Arabic because the traditionally Muslims only accept the Arabic translation of the Quran to be the most authentic. Right.
Yeah, so
I think so. It's
but the thing is, it's not about authenticity. I mean, obviously it's about authenticity as well. But for me, it's about memory. If someone memorize the Quran in any language, I mean, I give my flat to him in any language. You understand?
Well, I think the thing is though. I mean, we could have somebody memorize a modern text of the Quran, and that wouldn't demonstrate the authenticity of the Quran in its early days anyway, right? Like, we wouldn't be able to go back in time and figure out, oh, this was exactly what Muhammad, had talked about from the beginning anyway. So it's kind of a moot point, right?
The test is not about to find out if the Quran was authentic. The test is to examine if Muslims are lying. Because if you say you have memorized the Quran and you haven't done it, you are lying. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
That's the test.
I don't even know. This is outside of my scope of it. I don't even know if Muslims say that the whole Quran is memorized by single people. I almost wonder if different people like memorize just parts of it. Is it the actual? Maybe I wish Richard was here. Maybe Richard could tell me if that's true or not, because he would probably know more than me. But I don't know, Sophia, what do you think?
So I think that my oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, the thing is, you go to internet. I read that 200 million of Muslims are estimated to have memorized the entire Quran. It's astonishing. So
it should be pretty easy to prove then if somebody was just like, oh, I'm one of those people that Richard says that the claim apparently is that
he's messaging us right now.
Yeah, that it is individuals and they're called Hafiz. And they have competitions to see who recites it most accurately. So that might be an interesting place to look and be like, okay, like I want to see one of those competitions. I mean, realistically, I don't know if I have the patience, but I also wonder if someone's watching this show who's like, I don't know, imagine some 17-year-old dude who's about to be on summer break in like Ohio and has nothing else to do. I could imagine there being just like, you know what I'm going to do this summer? Like memorize the Quran so I can get that guy's flat. Like there is part of me that feels like that is likely to happen. Which if you want to take that risk, take that bet, go for it.
I think it's demanding proof that the Quran is memorized. I think it could mean the end of Islam. It could mean the end of Islam. I mean, basically, atheists demanding proof that the Quran has been memorized, that could end Islam.
Wait, why would that end Islam?
Because it could expose Muslims as liars, basically. No,
misremembering something is not the same as lying, I feel like, though, right? Like, you can definitely misremember some events and not be a liar. I don't know.
I would also mention
200 million people claim that they have memorized the Quran, and you test them, and they have not memorized more.
Okay. If they're making the claim, yes, I know the entire Quran, and then they can't reproduce it. Okay, then sure, yeah, those people are liars, but it doesn't make Islam a whole lie. Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, okay. Again, I'm an atheist. I don't think Islam, broadly speaking, is true in any sense of the word. I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily compromise the whole religion. At least I'm not convinced of that yet.
I think I would also say that just because we have a claim on the internet that 200 million people may have memorized the Quran, even if one of those people has, then there is truth to the phrase that it has been memorized. And also, even if we prove that all those 200 million people don't actually know the Quran, we can't say that it's never been memorized, because there's now been thousands of years. Maybe somebody in the year 800 did it, and we couldn't necessarily prove that that wasn't the case. So I don't think it would dismantle. Yeah, I agree. It wouldn't dismantle Islam. It would just mean that, like, some people who say they have something memorized don't.
Yeah.
But the point you don't understand, to memorize the Quran, it would require a whole life dedicated to do it. You understand? If you memorize the Quran, your entire life trying to memorize the book, surely if you accomplish the mission, you accomplish the goal, surely you want it tested. So surely you want to be recognized. Surely you want it to be. You understand? You don't keep it secret for you.
I don't know. That sounds like that's maybe what would be the case for you. And to be honest, the case for me, yeah, I would want people to acknowledge it. But that's not necessarily how everyone is, as surprising as it may be. Particularly if this is like an act of religious devotion to someone, then it might be something that they do choose to keep to themselves. Like, what if this is, a farmer in a remote part of the world who is working on memorizing this as they're out tilling soil? I think that's, I don't know, the world is a big place with a lot of different people. Not everyone operates with the same motivations. And so I feel like that's a big claim, to be honest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and anyway, I leave it open. I leave it open for you, so you want to take advantage of this kind of gap, I leave it for you. My flat is offered for whoever memorized the Quran. And
all right.
And that's it.
Listen, there's a guy named Miguel in England who has a flat for anybody that can disprove this. We don't know how you can do it. We haven't figured that part out yet, but if you can do it, find Miguel, I guess. I don't know how they're going to do that, but whatever it takes, right, Miguel?
My flat is for whoever proves writes the Quran from memory. I mean, it's
all right.
It's a flat. It's a nice flat, 3-bedroom flat, a kitchen, living room, nice.
Listen, in these times, I'm sure.
I know some people are like, it's going to be easier for me to memorize the Quran than it is for me to come up with the money it would take to buy a flat.
Or to find where the fuck Miguel lives. I don't know. We're not gonna post your contact info, Miguel, before you get any ideas. Okay, we're not doing that. So
we don't dox our callers.
It's very easy to contact me because I have discovered the nature of addiction. I have discovered the nature of God. I have discovered addiction. I have discovered atheism is a logical fallacy. It's very easy to contact me. I'm not a secret.
Okay. All right.
The thing is, I'll
leave it at that. I'm not gonna let you say any compromising information. I gotta let you go before before that happens, Miguel. So.
I do feel like I love the attitude of like, hey, people can find me if they want, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know that that's a great idea. Like,
listen,
maybe
I'm the guy on this call-in show. Okay, so that's how you know. I don't know what's up with that. Okay, I am looking more into this. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article. Check this out. This is interesting. In Iran, according to Resolution 573 of the Supreme Council of the Cultural Revolution, there is at least one specialized examination of the preservation of the Quran each year according to specific criteria. The reviewer of this evaluation is, let me skip to the next part. Anyway, they do these things where you can get a degree that either equates to a doctoral, master's, bachelor's, associate's diploma, and diploma degree, depending on how much of the Quran you have memorized. That's kind of crazy. You just had to memorize a book and you can get a master's or
Yeah,
a
I do kind of
doctorate.
like, Richard commented that they don't memorize the book, they learn the recitation, like
Yeah.
learning songs with the pacing, phrasing, and pitch. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if I think back to Sunday school and how much I had memorized from the Bible, done that sort of same way, I feel like there was also such a period of, okay, this is me like trying to recall things, so don't be, I may be a little inaccurate or paraphrasing a bit. The more we have written word and the ability to access information that we know is consistent, the less we use our memories in as strict of a way as we maybe used to. We don't have bards in the same way who come around and tell epic stories, and like that the Odyssey was something that was told before it was written down. That's a lot to memorize that would seem unlikely for someone to do today, because we just don't prioritize memory in the same way. And so, yeah, I feel like that to me makes it more believable that at one point there was maybe more people and it was more common to have memorized such lengthy works. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. Neil Postman talks about this, that of using ourselves to death. Now we're going back into communication theory and shit. But we do live in a culture that identifies written word as higher than the spoken word, when in reality, that wasn't always the case, particularly in like Muhammad's time, right? Muhammad is famously illiterate. So, the oral traditions that came about from that was almost as much of a pragmatism as it was of anything else, right? It's because when you have a culture where not everybody can read, it just makes sense to have an oral tradition for a lot of this stuff. So like the idea that one or two things could be different, I mean, that doesn't necessarily compromise Islam to me. It's just like we can look at way better reasons than just like, oh, some people misremember some stuff. A lot of true things have happened and people misremember the events in their retelling. That doesn't mean that those true events aren't any less true, right? So I just think there's if that's your focus, then it's not as strong of a case. Well, I was never good at the Bible memorizing stuff. I remember struggling trying to memorize Hamlet's soliloquy in high school.
Oh, yeah?
And now I still remember a little bit of it, but I don't know if I could do the whole thing. I struggle really hard with
Man,
it.
I feel like I want someone to send in a super chat to be like, try, Dan, try.
If someone sends a super chat of $20, let's do $20.
Okay.
Let's do Talk Heathen. I will attempt to do Hamlet's soliloquy. 20 USD, baby. That's it. I'll do it.
I like how this is the second, where 23 minutes into the show, this is the second bet we have going. Like, you can get a lot out of today, I feel like. An apartment.
Today's about gambling, folks. Today's about competition in terms of money. Yeah, absolutely. No.
There you go.
I feel like you were going to say something about the memorizing thing.
Oh gosh, I don't necessarily remember what it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, the irony.
I know.
Right? So good. It's so good. You're right, though.
It doesn't mean that it was untrue that I had a thought or that I was going to say something simply because I cannot remember what it was.
Yeah, and by the way, this applies to the Bible too. While we're still talking about this, I think this is important because, like, scriptural, there's definitely, especially if you look at Old Testament, New Testament studies is a little bit different in how you can categorize things. Because with New Testament, we have copies of the Gospels and copies of the letters that aren't original copies. They're definitely, usually hundreds of years afterwards. Sometimes I think one is within a few hundred years, a couple is within 100 years, but it's in fragments. We don't have original full copies. And a lot of people point to this as, okay, this is evidence that this stuff could be changed. I absolutely think that's the case. I absolutely think it could be changed, but that's a bit different when you're talking about like oral cultures and stuff. Cause like, I don't know, you can at least do textual differences and see, and yes, there are some differences. It is interesting to see that the ones that we do have are, I would say, somewhat minor, mostly minor. Famously, there's like Mark, for example. Maybe you know about this, Sophia. At the end of Mark in the Gospels, you see like there's this whole thing about how you can like cure people's snake poison and stuff, like just by praying for them and the whole 9 yards. They just like don't exist in early manuscripts. Another one is the adulterous woman that people are throwing rocks at, and Jesus says, "Hey, whoever has never sinned can cast the first stone," right? That's not found in early Gospels like at all. That's just not a thing, right? So those are like, I would consider kind of big deals, because it's like, oh, that kind of affects the whole veracity of the narrative. But I don't know. It's so a lot of people just kind of get the conversation and take it in like weird ways, I guess, is all I'm saying. I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know where I'm going with that.
When I'm thinking about like any of these things that were written down long enough after that. Have you ever been in an argument with someone where you're like, no, you said this. And they're like, no, I didn't. I said this. Or just full different realities. And this can happen 10 minutes after the event. I feel like just because someone wrote something down that they remembered, it might mean they fully believe it is true. And that in no way are they attempting to lie. But it certainly doesn't mean that they actually are accurate. I don't know why that took me so long to reach, but
it's not okay. Yeah, here's where I'm going with this. It doesn't necessarily mean manipulative intent. That's where I'm going with this, right? Okay, I think this is where I think people say, oh, well, I think people have this view of the Bible like it's this top-down sort of instrument of control for people, and I don't think that's always been the case. I think you can make a case for that in certain parts of the Old Testament, because there is a period in Jewish history where they went from an oral tradition kind of to a more written one, and there's different changes in the Bible that were made based on the rulings of the time, right? But like with the New Testament, it's kind of a little bit more, it's a little bit different, because we don't even know, first of all, how we officially truly chose the canon of the New Testament. A lot of people say, oh, it's because of the Council of Nicaea. That's not what the Council of Nicaea was about. Council of Nicaea is about a bunch of other stuff, right? So it's like, I hear this from atheists all the time who think that they know this stuff, and it's just like, it bothers me. I don't know. It really does.
I very much, so for me, actually, a huge part of my personal deconversion was about the Council of Nicaea, because I was reaching this point where I was starting to realize how much I had been mistaken about things in the past. And again, I don't necessarily know if it was always manipulative intent, but I was told by people the earth was 6,000 years old, and I didn't have enough information to really counter that. I didn't realize that there were more specimens of Lucy's variety than Lucy. There was just so much that I didn't know. And I don't necessarily think the adults around me knew either, actually. Like, so I have a hard time saying they were lying, but at the same time, like, they were teaching things that were false. And so I was realizing more and more of that, less and less of sort of this need for God to make anything make sense and to put everything all together, realizing how much we actually do know about these scientific, findings, theories, all this stuff. And then I was like, well, okay, but if you can rely on the text, then maybe there's something here. Maybe at least I can believe that all of the science stuff is true, but maybe also some of this text might at least be accurate enough to something someone experienced. And then I had always been told that Council of Nicaea narrative, that they all got together and sort of decided upon what made the most sense. And it was always this image of these really scholarly individuals who got together and, had some big brain time together and decided what Christianity would be. And then to learn that, oh, there was like one guy who was at the Council of Nicaea who later on had a hand in deciding what would become, Christian Orthodoxy.
Right.
I clearly am not the most articulate about it right now, but I think for me that was like, okay, then what do I even have?
Yeah.
Like, there's just no need for a God anymore, and also no textual, like there's no human history that makes this make sense.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, again, even if these kind of arguments get muddled, it doesn't lend credence to Christianity in any way, shape, or form. For those who are curious, a list was produced in reference from the Council of Nicaea that talks about, oh, these are the commonly accepted works, but that's not what the Council of Nicaea was about. The Council of Nicaea was about Trinitarianism, actually, mostly. It was about Gnostic interpretations of the Gospels and the Jesus message, saying that, there was one spirit versus like multiple spirits, like, versus like the Holy Spirit versus God versus Jesus. Like that's more in the territory of the Council of Nicaea. So there you go, folks who are curious at home. And I gotta say now, okay, it was Miranda Rensberger did donate $20. So
oh my goodness.
So now I got, okay.
Thank you, Miranda Rensberger.
I don't have it up in front of me. Actually, I'm going to pull it up on the side, so in case if I need to reference it, but I'm not going to look at it right now. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try this. This is Hamlet's soliloquy. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. And then he says, to die. Oh, man, I'm already messing this up. I think he says,
no, you got it.
To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Is that the next one?
Yeah, and then what happens if you dream?
There's the rub, for in that sleep of death, they flesh is heir to melee, something about the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. Oh God, I'm doing bad. He says, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. I remember that part. Wait, okay, I gotta look at this again.
And then what happens if you sleep? Like, to sleep.
Okay. All right, I'm looking at it now. Devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. Well, fuck. Okay. To sleep, perchance to dream. There's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may couple? We have shuffled off this mortal coil, must make us pause. There's a chance to make the suffering of there. Fuck. Okay, man, I'm doing badly at this. I thought I remembered more. I should have made this bet. Okay, gave us pause. Fuck, now I'm reading this. May have shuffled us mortal coil, may give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. Okay, here we go. For who would I'm looking up again. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the proud man's, the office, something about an office. What's in there again? God, I gotta go back to this. The pangs of despise. No, the oppressor's wrong. The proud man's contemplate. The pangs of despised love. The insolence of office. Oh God, maybe I should just abandon ship here. I can't. Man, there's too much pressure now.
I love it though. I mean, I feel like
I got like the first quarter.
At least just like read out the last bit of an ending, right? There's not too much left. I think.
I thought I knew it. Something about a bear bodkin. Insolence of office in the spurns. The patient merit of the unworthy takes when he himself his quietus make with a bear bodkin. Would fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life. All right, I'm stopping this. I'm aborting.
Well done.
No, it wasn't.
You earned that $20 through effort. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks. I would never make it as a Hazian, Hafiz, as a Hafiz.
Hafiz, yes.
I would never make it as a Hafiz. I can't even do Hamlet.
Which is, I mean, hey, I feel like it's relevant to the fact that like memory is sort of fickle, and we were just talking about that. And this was something at one point you had memorized. And we got a little bit of a performance there. I love it. I just remembered Shakespeare words and in a jumbled order. That's really all I remembered here. I mean, isn't that what most of Shakespeare is? I don't mean to offend any Shakespeare scholars in the audience, but to our modern ears, there is a little bit of a, like, if you've looked at those first folios, I'm like, it's hard to believe it's modern English, you know? You might not have been here for this call, but we've had at least one caller who has talked about the authenticity of Shakespeare. I don't think they themselves were a Shakespeare scholar. I think they taught English or something, but that was a thing that was a conversation we had. Actually, maybe that was Truth Wanted. I don't remember. I'm going to go ahead and guess that the argument is that like, well, we have less authentication for Shakespeare or something than we did. They were actually in support. They were saying that Shakespeare is real author. They were talking about the myriad of conspiracy theories that are out there about Shakespeare not being the primary author of his works, which like I don't care that much. I don't know. Damn. You gotta give credit where credit's due, Sophia, you know? I mean, okay, here's the thing. If I'm going to go ahead and believe that there isn't a particular like afterlife where somebody's sitting around being like, all that Shakespeare stuff, that was actually mine, and they're still upset about it now, like they're probably, I would hope, just kind of nothing. That would be my assumption. So I don't know that they mind anymore. Yeah. And I don't know. This is not always the case in every situation, but in this particular context, I'm not that worried about whether or not Shakespeare wrote all of his plays. Is what I would say. I guess it's like, it's drama. It's stolen valor. It's a stolen valor story, right? And it's like, hey, if this other person actually wrote all Shakespeare's plays, we should look at their works and consider them really awesomely, right? I think that's why people get invested in that kind of thing. That's fair. I just don't feel like it's impossible for Shakespeare to have been a genius. Once in a while they come round, you know, and so I suppose I've never been convinced. Maybe that's the issue. We have a super chat that came before, actually, that I'm just gonna throw out there.
Oh yeah, we do. It's from Siri Lay, who gave $5, who said, without divorce, my mom wouldn't have left an abusive relationship. Both my girlfriend and I would still be attached to abusive and toxic partners, which is definitely a good callback to the intro of the show, which we talked about no fault in divorce. Shout outs to associate producer Katie for pitching that idea, because it's true. I didn't really think of divorce as a big deal until I started getting involved in this activism stuff. And then I read all the posts from religious folks who are like, no, divorce is the absolute worst thing possible ever. And you should always, always, always fight for your marriage to never, ever, ever get into divorce, ever. And I just realized how insane that is. That is not a good take to have. So
yeah, I feel like a lot of times people will look at divorce rates and how the outcomes for children from divorced families are often maybe not as successful, however that would be defined in this instance, as those from families that remain married. But I feel like there's so many possible reasons for why that would be, right? Is it that families that remain married are more likely to not have abuse, or to have had less financial strain? To like, there's reasons why people remain married, and those can contribute to more positive outcomes for children. It's not necessarily the divorce itself. So when we try to make this argument based on like divorce is bad because look what happens to kids from divorced families, that's not really a cogent argument, I would say. So this was sort of interesting. I lived in the Philippines for a bit, and divorce is very hard to get there. And so I can't speak for the whole of the Philippines. This is just people that I personally knew. But it wasn't that uncommon in my experience for folks to just have been separated for 20 years, have fully moved on with other partners that they live with, that they functionally have a marriage-like relationship with, but they never got divorced because that was difficult, legally. And so I feel like if you removed things like no fault divorce, not only would you end up with people trapped in dangerous situations, but it wouldn't necessarily mean what folks think it would mean. It doesn't mean people actually stay together. It just means that you still have a legally binding contract saying that you're married.
You have a legally binding unhappiness at best, right? And look, I get it, right? I want kids to grow up in the best situation possible, but if a kid, like if a marriage is worthy of a divorce, that growing up situation is not going to be much better than at least a healthy divorce, right? And there are healthy divorces, I think. I think there are ways you can do it and absolutely have a kid be just fine, right? But obviously that still takes communication, right? That still takes
absolutely
something.
Well, and I think it's interesting when we pair the idea of women initiating most divorces with the idea that no fault divorce is bad. Kind of what we're effectively saying is that it's bad for women to be able to initiate divorce because there's sort of this assumption that there's no cause there, or that increases divorce rates. And yeah, it probably does. Women being able to leave does increase divorce rates, full stop. But I do have to wonder about the men in those relationships. Like, who has tried? How long has it been tried? What did trying look like? I also feel like, anyway, sorry. It's just interesting to think about, like, there's so many things happening in a relationship that it's really difficult to legislate around what is the healthiest environment for not only children, but the adults in that relationship too.
True. Yeah, there was, I just recently got engaged, and there was a question of like, do I even want to be married because of the hassle that comes with it? First of all, I love my fiance and I do want to marry her, but like, do I want the state to recognize that? Like, that was like a kind of a mini conversation I had in my own head. And I guess for most legal purposes, it is in my benefit to do so. And, I'll just go ahead and do it. But like, I really got me thinking about how just like, God, how institutionalized we've kind of made this sort of relationship, and just all the consequences that come of that. I don't know. There's also, so we've also talked about this too, about me possibly changing my last name and or both of changing either both of our last names to something else, or me changing my last name to her last name. And I've looked up a lot of stories about dudes trying to do that and how like the IRS hounds them and stuff because they think they're like trying to lie on their tax documents and stuff. And then like people give them weird looks and stuff or ask all these awkward questions. And it's just like, man, we have all these traditions wrapped up with this thing too that just make this whole thing complicated. I don't know. I've been thinking about all that stuff lately too.
Yeah. I think that you also bring up a really excellent point that there's so much to marriage already that more and more folks are postponing marriage or not getting married and just continuing to stay together anyway. Long-term cohabitation is extremely common. And a lot of folks treat that. They might even have a marriage ceremony and not sign the paperwork and send it in because they just don't want the government involved in that. Folks who are against no-fault divorce, I don't think may realize that that just means a lot fewer people are going to choose to get married. I would have had a lot more hesitance around getting married if it meant that this would be impossible to get out of. I think that I'm more likely to get married knowing that I have no intention of divorcing my partner. He's wonderful, great, awesome, double thumbs up.
Yeah.
But if I knew that I was trapped forever, then I would be less likely to get married at all.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Folks, I think we might have another call coming in here, but we do have open lines at the moment. So if you want to call in, you definitely should. The number is right there on the screen if you're watching. But in case you're just listening, it's 512-991-9242. Or go to that little linkity-doo in the description, as I'm going to call it just now, and call in through your computer if you don't feel like using your phone, because I get it. You know, there's a lot of reasons why not to do that. Gosh, there's something about the Shakespeare thing I was going to mention earlier, but now I can't remember what it was about. Oh, okay. So the story of the okay, there's another element to that Shakespeare story I was going to talk to you about, because when I had to memorize the Shakespeare thing, I think I like missed a day of school or something. It was the day I was supposed to like present to the class that I've memorized this thing and get graded points on it. By the way, how is that beneficial? I don't know why that wasn't a good time. Why couldn't I learn how to like do taxes or something?
I love a theatrical reading. When I was an English teacher for a time, I thought it was cool if kids, because they would practice reading, but then they would perform the reading and not have to memorize. I felt was okay. Anyway, sorry. Continue with your story.
Anyway, so I had to do it in front of the teacher, not in front of the students, with like another girl. I think we were both in the school orchestra, and I think we had missed. That's what it was. I think we had missed a trip. We had to go on a trip for school, and we had to do the next day. And so we actually did it in front of her at the same time. And I remember like just kind of low key like following along with her, because like I knew like
that's funny
some of the words, and I was just like, yeah. The insolence of law, the surprise, like I was like kind of doing that thing.
Just say bodkin really confidently.
I remember passing, but I was just like, I don't think I deserve that passing grade. I actually think I probably wouldn't have done it well. So
I know that you all had to memorize the same thing too. Like, come on, at least make it, expose kids to more. Anyway, never mind. Sorry, I don't need to criticize your teacher from decades ago and be like, why did you do that? Sorry.
Yeah. Talk about our school upbringing, but anyway, I'm sure you had to do some memorizing stuff. Your theater.
I did, but I also did it on my own for fun. When I would be bored in other classes, I would start memorizing like poems and things like that because I'm a monster. And so that was, I can give you some sonnets. And
you don't have to do that actually, because we do have a caller in queue right now. We have Blind Limey.
Just bragging about my ability.
In from Texas, Blind Limey, you are live on Talk Heathen. What's up?
Hello there, lady and gentle spoon. I just thought I'd call in with my thoughts on divorce, because I've been through. And as a person whose entry and stay in this country was predicated on my marriage, and that I believe is almost entirely arbitrary, it seems these days. Now, I wasn't doing a Richard Gere. I wasn't coming in just to get a green card. I very much loved my ex-wife at the time. Truly.
Hold on, Blind Limey. You're telling me that you weren't born in America? I'm just kidding. That'd be funny if I was like, really serious about it. But
my dad was, not me. Anyway, but the thing is that we had to go through all these hoops. I had to get all these visas and shit, and we had to get married when we came in. It was a very simple ceremony. It wasn't even a ceremony. We went to a courthouse in Williamson County, Texas. We wore jeans and matching T-shirts, and the thing is that it was so very arbitrary. It seemed it was just legal motions we had to go through, and the spirit of the marriage, quote unquote, really was just our efforts to want to be together. And then when it all fell apart at the end, she divorced me before my paperwork was complete to stay, and that absolutely wigged me out completely. I was stressed for almost a year, expecting the sword of Damocles to fall. They go, "Oh, you're not married anymore, get the fuck out of the country." But no, I went, "Yeah, no, this happens all the time. You know, seems like you're in it on good faith." And my evidence was good, but it wasn't amazing. There were some photos and some, evidence we'd gone on holiday together and a copy of our shared lease. That was about it, really. And
well, you had to wait. I didn't know this was a part of the process. You literally had to share vacation photos and stuff.
You have to compile a dossier of proof to show that your marriage is legitimate. Yeah.
Wow.
The best.
That's invasive. I don't want to show President Biden pictures of me and my honey on vacation. I would say, go away, Mr. Biden.
When this was, Blind Limey?
So the timeline of events very quickly is first met online, my to-be wife in 2010, courted up until 2015. She proposed to me. 2016, I moved to Texas. We got married in April 1st, actually. So what would have been my 8th wedding anniversary was just passed. And then you apply for a green card, and it's limited to 2 years. Predicated on your marriage. And then you apply to have that restriction lifted, and then they give it to you for 10 years. Now, it took the USCIS, the immigration people, nearly 2 years to process my paperwork. And by that time, the marriage had completely fallen apart. I had been cuckolded. That's another story. And she divorced me and moved out. And so I spent 7 months in 2020, utterly stressed, because I thought I'd go to this appointment that I was supposed to attend with my wife alone in San Antonio, and they would kick me out of the country. But they didn't. I went, "Well, yeah, you had your pay stubs were going into her bank account, and you had a lease together, and here are some photos of you on holiday, and this all seems legitimate. Here's your 10-year green card." It took 10 minutes. 7 months of rest for 10 minutes.
So I went through something very... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So to my point, it seems like such an arbitrary set of legal loopholes has very little to do with the actual spirit of two people joining together as one unit.
Yeah, absolutely. I went through, my husband's Australian, so we went through something very similar recently. And it's for a long time, he had to go to Canada every 2 years to go to a consulate so they could renew his visa there. And then they would have to send it back because he was on a work visa. And it's kind of all these like really specific things, even though at that time we were already married. And there's so much legal stuff around it that it does, I completely agree, feel very arbitrary. I was like pregnant. We put in our dossier like the first ultrasound pictures because we still hadn't gotten the green card yet. But anyway, it was, yeah. We also had the vacation photos in which I grew progressively fatter. So I was like, see, we've been together a while. Time has passed.
Oh my God. So, I don't like that. I don't like that you have to show your whole, I mean, I get the rationale, right? But like, I don't think it should be a big deal in the first place. Listen, this is outside the politics of the show. I shouldn't get into. I'm an open borders kind of guy, to be honest. I'm more into that side of the camp. I don't think you should have to demonstrate that you're really like an American so you get to live here. Like that to me just doesn't compute. I don't think that's a good reason to be like, oh, I get, yeah, this American likes you a lot. I guess that means you can live in our country now. Like that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But anyway, I'm glad you're here still, Blind Limey. I'm glad they didn't kick you back over the pond. You know, who knows what could have happened to you in the savage lands of England. I mean, my goodness, anything is possible, you know.
Sad apocalypse, probably. But then there's the other end. There's the other end of the spectrum. And I am also an example of this, because there's certain denominations that hold that marriage, the ceremony of marriage, the institution of marriage is this like unassailable, sanctified thing. Catholics, very specifically. Mm-hmm. But because religion, especially in this country, is treated with such kid gloves, you can basically marry on very little credentials. I am an ordained minister. I don't believe in any God, but I'm a Unitarian minister. I filled out a form. It was free online. So I can legally marry people in the state of Texas. That's how sanctified this vaunted establishment of marriage is. They'll even let a chud like me do it.
So wait, should we call you Reverend Blind Limey now?
Yeah, Reverend Blind Limey.
Yeah, no, you can call me father, just call me daddy. But anyway, but this is the thing. So I put a challenge out to all the theists out there and all the people who feel that marriage is special and sacred and wonderful because of some external ordainment rather than intrinsic togetherness. Prove that there's something more to it than just arbitrary bollocks. Because Dan and his missus, I think, are going to be together forever, not because of marriage or because of legality or because of God or because of any other bollocks from the outside. It's just because they are wanting to be together, and that's how it should be. And there's no external crap that's going to affect that, in my opinion. But who am I to say? I'm a divorcee.
Sometimes divorcees know the best.
True. Thank you for the kind words, Blind Limey. Gosh, that'd be really awkward if we end up not working out. But I think you're right. I think we're good. But no, yeah, I agree with everything you said. You know, one of the funniest things too is, yeah, go ahead. Well, sorry, I missed that. What was that?
Beautiful relationship.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful relationship, baby. Knock it off with all them negative waves.
No, that whenever when gay marriage was finally legal for everybody in the US, that was a counter argument that people were talking about when that was still an issue was, well, it'll devalue marriage if the gays can do it. Basically was the argument, right? Like marriage is supposed to be this super magic institution that only straight people can have, and if the gays do it, well, it's not as special anymore. Which is like, to your point, like you could just marry anybody whenever. It doesn't really matter.
Also, child marriage is still largely legal. You know,
that's also true. That's
like if it's that special and we need to keep it special, then let's just all agree to keep it above 18. Like, you know, it's like, 14-year-olds can get married with parental consent. It's fine. I'm like, you know what would devalue my marriage is watching a middle schooler get married right next to me. Like, I don't know.
True. Yeah. It's been
I've said my piece. Marriage ain't special as an institution. Marriage ain't ordained by God. The union of two people is special, but you don't have to go through a bunch of loopholes to make it so. And that's the last I'll say on that.
I just spent a couple days full on in training for marriage therapy, very specifically. So my brain is very in that right now. Couples therapy specifically, not marriage therapy. So could apply anywhere. And so much, I feel like, of the biblical advice for relationships is sort of contraindicated for actually having a loving and lasting relationship. The notion of submission on the part of one party is absolutely not helpful. The idea that there needs to be a leader full stop is, again, absolutely not helpful, even amongst couples who are religious. Like, it's about perspective taking and taking your share of conflict and things like that, which are, I feel like, is often not what is actually preached. Sorry, I just hit my table. And so, yeah, it's interesting to think about it as this sacred thing when the past 2 days I've been steeped in like kind of the science of it. Like, here are the ways that we can interact that have been shown to be successful versus less successful. And how do you recover from those things? There's a science to it, just like anything.
Here's another thing too. A lot of people say, and actually, I'll go ahead and let you go first. Thank you, Blind Lime. We really appreciate you calling in. I will keep you on the phone forever. But
America
thank
and Texas is better with you in it.
Yes,
so.
I endorse that. Thank you so much, Blind Libby. Yeah, what I was going to add too is just, oh gosh, what was I about to say? Well, I forgot. Oh no, okay. So as an atheist, right? People, first of all, make the very wrong assumption and say, well, isn't marriage a Christian institution? Why do you want to take part in marriage? Yeah, as if people weren't getting married before Christianity or Judaism was a thing. But the fact that I don't believe there's an afterlife, or the fact that I could do whatever I want with my life. I could, be as promiscuous as I want to, or have as many long-term relationships with people and not get married as I want to. But I am still choosing to get married because I love this person and I want to be with this person. If anything, that should make the marriage like even better, because I feel like I have to, because a religion says, well, this is how you should responsibly pursue a relationship. Now, granted, actually, there's very good evidence, a lot of points in the Bible where Paul specifically says people shouldn't get married at all, which no Christian ever follows outside of monks, I guess. But outside of that, for everyone else, I do get married, and not to contain my lusts or whatever, as like Paul puts it, but no, because I do love this person, and I do want to be with them, and I can do that. If anything, again, I think it makes the marriage, I don't know, even more important, I guess.
Yeah, well, because when it comes to, this is going to be some of my couples therapy training that's going to come out, hence I floofed my hair for some reason. That's me giving a presentation, I guess. When it comes to any ritual in the life of a couple, it is more effective and matters more when you've agreed about what it means to you. So if you're told by some third-party external source that this thing is important and you do it for that reason, that can be any ritual, like, buying someone flowers on Valentine's Day. If you do it because you're supposed to, because culture says so, it isn't as meaningful, it isn't as powerful. And that's sort of been borne out by research, that having a ritual can be absolutely very important, but you need to agree on what it means. And so with my relationship, just as an example, we didn't necessarily agree on the concept of marriage from the beginning. We talked a lot about it and talked a lot about what it meant to both of us as individuals and then us collectively before we actually decided to be married. That gives it so much more power. And so I sort of love the way that you're talking about it, because it means that there was some level of agreement and exploration as to, if you want to enter into this because you actually thought about what it meant in your specific situation,
Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And Sophia, we have another caller who wants to talk to us. We have Daylin, who's calling in from Virginia. Daylin, you are live on Talk Heathen. What's going on?
Yeah, so I wanted to call in. I am an atheist, and I agree with having people come into our country and stuff if they want to. And I heard you say you agree with this concept of open borders. I wanted to ask if you would elaborate a little bit more on that, what that means, what that would look like, how you protect immigrants from, being underpaid or not being treated equally. How do you go about those type of things?
Okay, sure. I can give my take. I will say this is not my expert. They don't let me on Talk Heathen to talk politics. They let me on Talk Heathen to talk religion stuff mostly. So let me give that caveat first of all. Okay. So this is not, I'm not used to talking about this on the call-in show format, but in short, because I do think it does tie into some concepts in this show, and I can get to that. But I was first introduced to this from a book from Brian Kaplan, and he did it with this guy. Can't remember the other author's name, but the book is called Open Borders. And I'm Googling right now. Open Borders, The Science and Ethics of Immigration. is what first turned me on to this concept. Okay, so I'm born in the U.S. and that gives me some legal rights and limitations on where I can go. If I was born in Malta, my life, my opportunities will be completely different than what's afforded to me in the country that I was born in. And so on some level, there's if you take into account the veil of ignorance, right? If we were able to not be able to know where our circumstances would be when we were born and we had the choice to pick it, we would, of course, a lot of us would want to be born into like first world countries, right? Because like of what's been given to us, barring anything else, right? Without knowledge of anything else. And so there's inherently economic advantages and disadvantages for where you're born. I'd like to try to mitigate that as much as possible. I think open borders presents this kind of idea. You mentioned this example. I've worked for companies in the past that have outsourced labor to places like India, places where they actually get the same level of training that I do, but they get to pay them lower wages, which again are better for most folks that are living in India, but are just taking advantage of an economy that's just isn't the same as the US. I feel like those people should be getting the same amount of pay that I get because we're getting the same level of work, but they get it relative to their geography versus relative to their level of capability, which I just think is philosophically wrong. So open borders kind of proposes this idea about basically open economic borders between different countries to be able to have more accessibility for opportunities. I think it would raise levels of poverty across the world. I think it would give people, more access to better kinds of work than what is often offered in the places which they're born. And so like that's kind of what makes me, interested in pursuant of that kind of policy. How that plays into citizenship, that might be a bit of a different conversation. And to be honest, I don't know the full answers to that. But in terms of like employment, yeah, I'm totally open borders. I don't really see how like I said, Blind Limey just liked an American. That's what he did. That's what he earned to be here. He didn't have to like memorize the Constitution. He didn't have to, be born in a hospital here like I did. Like he had to go through a whole bunch of paperwork and stuff that I just didn't have to do, just to be in the country that he wanted to be in. And I just want to try to equalize that as much as I can, because I just think that's ridiculous. So anyway, that's my take on that. Daylin, did I answer?
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make sure, did I answer your question so far? Because I talked a lot there.
Yeah, I think you did. If I'm understanding you correctly, your view is less about citizenship and more about an economics where people would get paid equally for equal work. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm mostly interested in. I mean, obviously, I think first of all, fucking anybody should become a U.S. citizen if they want to. Fuck it, that's my opinion. I don't really care. This country was built on robbing other people of their fucking land and just saying, yeah, we're here now, so fuck it. I don't give a shit. Anybody can be an American. Fuck you, not you specifically. Just I'm fucking the general population. Yeah. That's what I mean when I say that.
Sorry, but, I just want to take that out of context and like put it out of
anyway, yeah, citizenship's bullshit, I think for the most part. But in terms of American citizenship, yeah, I didn't do anything to earn this. I did nothing. I got a paper given to me when I was born that says congratulations, you get to be better off than most of the world because your parents lived here, right? I think that's stupid.
Yeah. I think I agree with everything you said there, Dan. I would also say that it's possible I'm a little bit more aspirational in my idea of like what it means to be American. Like I see what it's been and I'm like, but it could be, this amazing thing, right? I sometimes am out to like reclaim patriotism from folks who I think are deeply corrupt in their impression of it. And I look at it and say that so many of the folks who believe the most in what the promise could be of America are immigrants. And, God Bless America was written by an immigrant. So like we have such a storied history. And it's like people who become late in life atheists or late in life Catholics, they become very like passionate about that new thing that they are. I think we're only really made better by it. I think that that's borne out again and again by evidence. And it's not because it's like there's a lot of paperwork to become an American, and so you're really proud of it now because you finished all the paperwork and that's really what it means. It's because there can be, anyway, an American ideal. And I think that a lot of the folks who are born here and get really nativist about it are completely missing what I find value in. I would also point out, like, when I am also fairly radically open border, that for me, it would also mean things like, thinking about how to have people be able to come and work here and then also go home again. But while they're here, they are spending money in our economy and making our economy better, making the communities that they live in possibly better and more functional. And whenever we end up talking about like stealing American jobs, not gonna lie, my husband was that guy. He moved here from Australia because we couldn't find enough people to fill tech positions in the Seattle area, and there weren't enough people who lived in the Seattle area to do so. Right now, there is legislation that says that he has to be paid more than an American worker. And the idea behind that is that it's supposed to discourage the hiring of foreign workers, which doesn't really happen because there were not people to fill those jobs here anyway. And so I would look at it and just say, like, we have things that we can do in our education system in terms of like availability of jobs in the United States that we can, if we're worried about having enough jobs to go around for folks who are born here, we have solutions. We're just not enacting them. And so when I look at it, I'm like, why would we pretend that this is going to help? I think whenever we get to the core of it, it's the same old nativist talking points for closed borders or for restriction that we've always had. Like, if you look back historically, it's always based on xenophobia. It's always based on a misunderstanding of how economics actually works. And I look at it as like, pointless. I moved to Texas late in life comparatively, and yet I'm still like, you know what? I'm going to make this a place that I can make better. Why would we not want that?
Yep.
That is true. And I mean, my concern isn't really about American jobs or any of that. It's more like, being a citizen gives you protection under, workforce, I can't remember, is it workforce services or whoever it is that comes in and dictates like how a human being can be treated in the workplace and stuff? Like, if you're not a citizen, then companies can like pay you 25 cents or mistreat you, and there's no protection for an immigrant who is just trying to make an honest living, like that. I guess that's where my concern is. Does it make sense?
Yeah, well, and there aren't really protections for undocumented immigrants, which is why I think an open border idea is that there would be fewer undocumented people and more people could come in legally. So more people would be extended those protections simply by the government knowing they're here and therefore being able to enforce those protections. That would be my take. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Okay. Yeah, I don't care. Again, if it, when I brought up the example earlier, I'm in the same boat as you, Daylin. I don't care that an Indian person is taking my job. I care that they're not getting paid the same that I am. They should get paid the same that I am relative to my position because they're doing the same kind of work. So yeah, I think that comes down to, we have a privileging of American citizenship almost compared to other people doing that kind of work. In my ideal world, people could be able to locate or do work in other countries without any restrictions whatsoever. And that would, in my opinion, open up the competitiveness that we could have of work. The fact that we do have laws that say, hey, you can't treat American workers this way. Oh, but you can treat people in these other countries. Yeah, fuck it. Like, that's the problem right there. Maybe we shouldn't have special treatment for that. Maybe if we want to be a true capitalist nation, we say, hey, the folks over here are doing really good work. We should get them in instead of, I don't know. Again, I'm not a scholar on this. This isn't what I normally talk about, but this is just my own thoughts,
Well, I appreciate it. And I'll read that book, Open Borders, Science of Immigration, and take a look at what his argument is. So. Yeah,
pretty interesting. Again, it's the biggest thing I came about was, it would enhance overall world economy if all countries were able to produce an open borders policy like this. There's this idea that, some countries would benefit from others if this was enacted. But his argument is actually the opposite, that it would, bring up world poverty. But again, this is me I'm a guy who just read a book and is just parroting stuff from a book. That's not my field of study. That's not my expertise. So I'm just making as many caveats as I can. So anyway.
I would say also most decision makers, I would be surprised if they'd even read a book. So, just don't discount yourself too much there, bud.
I guess so. There's something to be said about that. Anyway, Daylin, anything else you want to add before we let you go?
No, I was just curious because it was a concept I had never heard before. So I was just curious.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely not as popular of an idea, I guess, because America, we don't like other people. I think that's what it is.
Before you go, real quick, yes, I agree with that. Sorry, not to step on that point. That's an important one. Yeah. But before you go, Jimmy Jr. is hosting next week. And Daylin, he would really like you to call in when he's hosting. So if you're available next week to call in to Talk Heathen, Jimmy Jr., who will be hosting, would love to talk to you.
Yeah, sure. You said it's Jimmy Jr.?
Yeah. Yep. He'll be hosting next week's Talk Heathen, and he apparently commented in that he
messages saying he wants to talk to you. So either you did something really right or really wrong.
So, I'm gonna guess really right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Let's hope really right. I try to be very respectful when having these conversations.
All righty, thanks so much, Daylin. I'll let you go. Have a good one. Okay, so the other thing I was going to say about this, right? So back to my college days, I remember my communications professor actually showed us a video of Joel Osteen, and it was for a media. We were talking about like presentations in media, I guess, and he was using a sermon from Joel Osteen as an example, and he pointed something out that just at the time just really blew my mind. Maybe it's more of a banal observation now, but he showed a shot that was panning the whole church, and he said, "Check out those flags in the back. You see, you got the American flag and the Christian flag." And I thought he was going to make a commentary about the Christian flag, because there is a Christian flag that organizations do, and he's like, "Why is that American flag there?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Why is that American flag there in that church?" So
in the book, White Too Long, which is written by a Christian, but it's about the history of American Christianity and how it can overlap a lot with white supremacy. Yeah. He talks about how when there were biblical scholars who toured the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and some loved it, but some actively pointed out how they made American history inextricable from Christian history in a way in that museum. And the owners of Hobby Lobby put a lot of money into that particular museum, which I found rather interesting. But it's sort of it's a very narrow view of even Christianity, and even Christians in this instance were calling out how the more you make Christianity America first, the more likely you are to attract white supremacists and white supremacist arguments, because it does tend to privilege one nation and their view of the founding of it and how it actually protects Christianity somehow, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah, there's definitely, first of all, if you grew up in a conservative evangelical church, or you grew up around folks that were like that, like I did, they tend to have the same feelings about immigrants, which is, in general, they don't like them, or they just talk about we should keep getting the good ones in, right? There is this idea that, these immigrants have to, the ones that work really hard and, really try in the system, they should be able to get it, where it's like, yeah, dude, I know your son or whatever, he's not working his hardest, but he gets to live here. You know what I mean? It's like, there is this idea that, if they're going to come here, they have to be the most hardest working. They have to be, they have to contribute something economically, or else their value of being here as a person isn't worth it, right? And
it's interesting because I feel like we should do super chats and Patreons, but I'm also going to throw this in there real quick. That I do have heritage from the Mayflower. I have heritage from like early founding in Pennsylvania, people who were Quakers, people who ended up moving to the United States because they were politically active, actually. It kind of got kicked out of where they were already from. I know where my ancestors were and what they were doing during the Civil War. I have a very strong and very long heritage of people who lived in America. And I absolutely look at my family of ruffians and sometimes agitators, and they have not always been right, and they have not always contributed to anything economically. And I would find it absolutely ridiculous if I were to then gatekeep this idea of what it means to be American, when also I can tell you that the folks at the Mayflower, they didn't fill out any paperwork, just showed up. And so I look at it and I'm like, apparently some of my family, and this was actually some of the Christian part of the family, they didn't want to be part of a united Germany. And so they moved to Oklahoma. And I'm like, how does that, I mean, I would like to think eventually that benefited Oklahoma, I guess, just because of my own personal family pride. But again, I don't think they really filled out much. They just kind of showed up and we're like, let's have a farm in one of the hardest places to farm around. Definitely not over farming this land like everyone else has already been doing. So I don't know. It would just be so insane I've heard people talk about, well, my ancestors came here the right way. I'm like, the right way was easy as shit back then, though. Like, all right.
I mean, you can take advantage of undocumented people in this country too. Right? There's, you know, I think Daylin's kind of mentioning this, but it's like, the people who are here to work, even to take advantage of those opportunities, they don't even get the same benefits that we do, and they work just as hard, if not harder, than a lot of people that I know. So it's just this idea of citizenship. I don't know, this idea of being American. If it truly is more ideology based, right, as you aspire it to be, if it's truly more of
I dream of it being pot, anyway.
Right, then paperwork should be the last thing that anyone should care about when it comes to people being here. But that's not how we work or the world works. And that's unfortunate. Anyway, let's talk about things that we're more inclined to usually talk about. Specifically our patrons, Sophia. We do have our top 5 patrons listed out this week. Would you like to read them?
Sure. Okay. We have number 1, Dingleberry Jackson. Number 2, Oops, all singularity. Number 3, Davor Valjean. Did I say that one right? I'm always trying. Wait, that was 3. Yeah. Number 4.
That was 3.
Okay, I have to
you got this one.
Up to this one. Kalevi Helveti.
Yeah, that's it.
Number 5, Leaves in the Trees, and an honorable mention to number 6, Phantomex, which is a really fun name.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many really fun names.
Number 5, Left in the Leaves is actually what it is.
Did I not say that?
You said sorry. Left in the Trees.
Yes, you're right. It's leaves, not trees. I'm sorry.
Want to make sure our patrons get their full shout out. So thank you to everybody that donates on the Patreon. Fun fact, Sophia doesn't get any of that. I don't get any of that. Most of our volunteers, I mean, all of our volunteers don't get any of that. It goes towards the atheist community of Austin, and it tells them that, hey, Talk Heathen is a cool show, and we should put more stuff into it. So thank you to everybody that donates on that. We also have a super chat from Jimmy Jr., member of 2 months, who gave $1.99. And in the super chat said, I fucking love both of you. So thank you for that.
We love you too, Jimmy Jr.
Jimmy is great. And it's very funny. I don't know. We get super chats from like our own peeps sometimes, and I don't know. It's really funny to see that happen.
That's nice. I still feel like I'm a newer host in many ways. Like I'm still getting to know it. So I'm like, okay, I did something okay. Like, yeah.
Jimmy Jr. Is awesome. If you haven't seen a show with Jimmy Jr., you should definitely check it out. We have another person. They're in the calling queue right now. We'll get to them in just a second. So we got a few more minutes of just you and me, Sophia.
Do a screenshot?
What? Oh, yeah. Let's do a screenshot real quick. Yeah. If we got a screenshot on the ready, maybe we just let the crew know, hey, screenshot, put it on the screen if you got it, and then we'll give our wonderful, fabulous, and informed commentary. Let's see what this one says. This is me. This says would do things at the bottom. I guess that's me talking about it. And then somebody commenting, who has the authority to decide when you are born and when you die? The author of life. He makes that decision for every single person who lives. You are deriding God for being God. Do you realize how ridiculous you sound and how bad of an argument this is? Well, I guess if I thought that a fetus was a person, maybe you'd be onto something. But I don't. So
there's that.
That's it. That's all I can say, because that's 100% talking about abortion. I don't even have to know the context to know that's what that's about, right?
I feel like just following the internal logic of this comment, like, so if God has control of these things, then you shouldn't criticize him for controlling them, ? With the whole like deriding God for being God thing. It's like, I mean, that's sort of saying that if someone has the authority to make a choice, you cannot criticize the choice they make. And that seems very silly to me.
Like, Sophia, let's say you have cancer and you seek treatment for that cancer. And I would say, no, Sophia, you need to let God be the deciding factor as to whether or not you pass from this illness. I think anybody would rightfully tell me to fuck off if I ever said that, because that's fucking stupid. And the fact is, for abortion care, right, we have ways to make this as seamless of a procedure as we can possibly get it to be, right? Like we can make all parties involved as comfortable as possible. And when it comes to fetus, especially if we're talking about in the first trimester, even there's no capacity for suffering at that point for the fetus. So it's not like you're really harming an individual. It really comes down to what's going to be working best for the family involved, because that is the most important decision at the end of the day. And if you don't agree with that, then we're just not talking the same thing. I don't know what you care about, but it's not people if it is, right?
I think when I went into a deep dive of my opinions on that particular topic, I just was like, okay, whether you believe whether you believe fetuses are people or not, do I want to adhere to the idea that anyone is able to claim the organs of someone else to keep them alive? Because say that the person who's pregnant and the fetus both have full personhood, it would still have the premise that this one person, the fetus, has the right to the organs of another person to stay alive. And I don't agree with that or believe in that. So like for me, that's where I do sort of a limit.
We got one more call
today.
We're getting really serious. We might be more serious. There is one more call in the queue. I think if you want to take it, we can. Otherwise, we can end the show early. What do you think? You want to go for it?
Let's do quick. Okay. I mean, I'm curious about the argument. So
okay, let's see here. We got Chase, who's calling in from the USA. Chase, you're live on Talk Heathen, and if we can, let's try to make it just a little quicker because we are getting towards the end of the show. What's going on, Chase?
All right, we can do this as quick as possible. I got a thought experiment about animal rights, and it's called Name the Trait.
Okay. I'm ready for you.
I love a game.
Okay, cool. I just don't want to overwhelm you. Stop me if you need to. So basically the idea is, the question is, so Name the Trait, NTT, is a consistency test, basically. So it asks the question, basically, what is the difference between humans and animals that makes it okay to slaughter animals but not slaughter humans? And so instead of actually running NTT on you, instead of running Name the Trait on you, because it can make people uncomfortable and stuff, and I love y'all, I don't want to make it a debate or anything hectic, I could just kind of explain the process to you and how, like, some people give their common answers and then the responses to that. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So some people will say in response to that question, what's the difference between humans and animals that makes it okay to slaughter animals but not humans, is that animals have lower intelligence. And so that's the trait that they're naming, is that animals have lower intelligence than humans. And I can grant that, right? We're smarter than animals, sure, on average. But then the question would be, well, what if we found a human who had that trait of lower intelligence than the average human, such that, you know, this human was, let's say, severely brain damaged or mentally disabled, such that they're only as smart as like a 3-year-old child or a dog or a pig? Is it okay to slaughter that human because they have lower intelligence? If intelligence is the trait, then it should be okay to slaughter this human. But most people say, no, it's not okay to slaughter mentally disabled people, right? Or anybody of lower intelligence, because it doesn't, we all seem to agree, for the most part, most of us agree that just because somebody's of lower intelligence, that's not a justification to cause them harm. In fact, they need protection and stuff. So then we have to then the person will have to kind of go back to the starting point and name a new trait, because if they don't feel comfortable with that situation, then it's not the fact that lower intelligence was the trait that makes that differential treatment. And so then they'll say, maybe, you know, oftentimes they'll say things like, well, it's DNA. It's the fact that we're human and the animals are animals. It's not lower intelligence. Or maybe it's, you know, and so we'll say, okay, well, what if we found an alien species, you know, big hypothetical, but what if we found a species that was not human? They had different DNA, but they looked just like humans and they act just like humans and they think just like us, equal intelligence to us, but they have different DNA. Would it be okay to slaughter this alien species for you know, out of just for pleasure of the taste bud?
Yeah.
And most people, you know, sometimes people will say, yeah, it's fine to kill aliens. And it's like, well, okay, you know, or, you know, even though they look and act just like us, or sometimes most people will say, no, it's not okay to kill, like, you know, those individuals because they're so similar to us. And so then we have to, again, go back to the drawing board, that initial position. Well, what is the trait then, you know? And sometimes they'll say, well, it's a combination of those two factors, lower intelligence and DNA. So then I ask, well, if we had that alien species who look just like us, except they're mentally disabled or brain damaged to some degree, right? To where they're only as smart as a 3-year-old child or a dog or a pig, but they look and act just like basically a mentally disabled human, but they have different DNA and they're lower intelligence. Do those two traits now justify slaughtering this individual? And some people will say, yes, it's okay to kill mentally disabled aliens that are just like indistinguishable from your regular mentally disabled person. And some people are like, no, that's disgusting. That's terrible. It's wrong to do that. So we have to go back to the drawing board. But if they're consistent, and I'll wrap up real soon here, I know I've been ranting, but if they're consistent and they say, yeah, it's okay to slaughter the mentally disabled aliens because they have lower intelligence and different DNA, well, I would just call that a reductio ad absurdum, where they're consistent, yes, but their argument reduces to absurdity, where they look atrocious, and most people will think that's pretty disgusting behavior to do that. If that was someone there, you know, that would be a terrible thing to do. And so the other option is just to realize that lower intelligence and different DNA, or the different shape that somebody comes in, is irrelevant morally, and that we should respect animals and aliens and anybody who's different, and just be nice and not slaughter them.
Alrighty.
There's a lot of things there.
A lot of things there. Sophia?
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking, maybe just because in the interest of time and we're kind of like trying to wrap up, maybe we can respond to you off air just so it doesn't become a huge conversation. I don't know. But either way, I would say that, unfortunately, I think kind of the whole idea is a bit of a reductio ad absurdum, because we're trying to reduce the experience of being human to a specific trait, or even specific cocktails of traits, with people who have maybe never thought about this before. I think it's a fun thought experiment, just because I think it's good to critically examine why we are okay with eating meat, and I think it's okay to be uncomfortable with that, and to think about like what our limit is for that. So my mother recently, she participates in a lot of autopsies. She stopped eating pork because it was just too similar to human. And, you know, I think that it's interesting how people come to these conclusions. But I would say that whenever we start with an argument that's just like, name a thing that makes humans, it's already a little ridiculous, which can be okay for a thought experiment, but I find it maybe not as useful because it will sort of stop at a thought experiment. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, when Plato set out to define a human being and announced that the answer was a featherless biped, Diogenes, quite famously, went to Plato's school and presented a plucked chicken and said, "Behold, a man." Right? And so Chase knows me. Chase, we've had conversations. Chase, you know I'm a vegan, same way as you. You know we have very similar ideas of animal treating animals, right? And so I think this is a great tool to get people started, and I imagine that's your intention, is a tool to get people started to think about the traits in which we actually make our decisions, right? And I think for that purpose, it's a great conversation starter. Of course, I don't think your intention is this, but if anybody is trying to, seriously suggest, obviously to construct an entire moral foundation off of just using this particular method, there might be, some additional thought that would be put into it. And again, I'm not claiming this is what you are saying is what is to happen. I just think, obviously, as Sophia pointed out, there may be some limitations, but it is a good starting point. I do think examining, particularly in animal ethics, what makes human beings so much more sort of above reproach when it comes to the decisions we make in how we decide to eat things versus other beings. There is something to be said about that. There is pause to be had. But it's a tale as old as time, trying to do this whole, figuring out the basics through trait identification, right? Anyway, I guess that's my thoughts. Chase, what do you think?
Yeah, and just to wrap up real quick, I guess, one thing I would say is, if it, a burning building, is happening and it's two individuals in that building and it's, either a puppy, I can only save one, it's a puppy or Hitler, I'm going to save the puppy. In that case, doesn't matter,
yeah,
right?
sure.
One case where like species ain't got nothing to do with it because the puppy ain't going to hurt nobody, but. And then but I'd love to talk to you guys more on Discord in your ACA, the Atheist Community, Atheist Community of Discord, the ACD on Discord is going to be a fun chat afterwards, so people should join that. And I would just encourage people to watch the documentary called Dominion with Joaquin Phoenix. It's on YouTube for free, Dominion on YouTube.
Alrighty, thanks so much, Chase. Appreciate you chiming into the show. Go ahead and let you go. And I again have had conversations with other folks in what I would call the skeptic community that make absolutely terrible arguments against veganism on my count, or at least protections of animal rights in some capacity. And I've heard some better criticisms, but ultimately I got to the position that I did because I really did try to explore this stuff, and I found that this is like one of those topics that people are just very uncomfortable talking about. That being, we have a capacity to decide not to eat the things that we do. How much do we follow through with that? So,
I think that's totally reasonable. And if I'm honest about it, which I suppose I should be about all things when we're, seeking what is true. I haven't really gotten as into it as I know I could, simply because there's, I guess, lots of different issues and we all pick our different paths or what's most important to us. But I have the sneaking suspicion that I would feel more obligated to change some of my lifestyle than I'm currently ready to, which is a terrible thing to say and just be like, I know that's probably, even if I wouldn't be a full vegan, like I know that there's probably more to that, like going that direction than I have.
Sure.
Yeah, which is why I love the thought experiment. I'm like, be uncomfortable, but I am like,
how many Christians would say the same thing about being an atheist, right? If you have to discover, hey, this thing isn't true. Oh, well, that's going to make finding new friends awkward. That's going to make the communities I volunteer with a lot more awkward. That's going to make a lot of things more difficult,
The implications of it in my life are hard, and I'm not able to take that on yet.
Definitely a parallel, I think.
But
that's
an interesting thought.
Folks, we are about to finish things up. Just want to say thanks again to everybody that donated. Thanks again to everybody that
there's one more super chat you should throw in there.
Oh, let me get that super chat in there real quick. It's from Nash, who gave $2 Canadian, said, "What a great show today. Good job, you guys." Thank you so much. That's so nice. Let's give some quick love rings to everybody out there on the count of three. I'm gonna blast my love rings. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Hey, love rings.
Invisible love. There we go. It's delayed.
There
The love rings had to travel through the internet waves, and sometimes they get caught up in the cables. So thank you for those love rings. The prompt this week is, what's a good response to Jesus loves you? and give your comments for that. I'm very interested to see what people will say about that particular prompt. If you want to hang out with folks on the Discord, there's a tiny.cc/ACD Discord. That's the link to go to the fan run Discord. And with that announcement done, I think that's everything I have to say. Sophia, was there anything else you want to chime in before I wrap it up?
No, I think you got it handled.
Okay, well, if you don't believe, this is your community and we appreciate you being here. If you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
Thanks again, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.